Welcome, listener, in the shadows. We bring stories into the light. Join me as we explore the encounters no one speaks of and the things that watch from the dark. You were never supposed to see this, but since you have, you might as well wear it. From the vaults of the shadows, a new collection of unsettling apparel and artifacts pulled straight from the stories that were never meant to surface. Soft, worn-in shirts and hoodies that feel like something you dug out of a locked trunk in an abandoned ranger station. This isn't just merch, it's evidence. In the high reaches of Montana's Bitterroot Range, past the last marked trail, lies an unlisted patch of wilderness nicknamed Cinder Hollow by old forest rangers. It's not officially recognized, just a name passed between seasoned hikers and backcountry hunters. Stories surround it. Lost hikers turning up weeks later barefoot and silent, tents torn open with no sign of struggle, and sounds in the night like ragged breathing too close to the ground. Four friends, Jard, Maya, Liam, and Nina, have made a tradition of one annual camping trip far from cell towers and civilization. This year, it's Derek's pick. He heard about the hollow from his cousin, a former smoke jumper who warned him not to go. That warning only made Derek more curious. They pack light. No guns. Just 2 tents, some freeze-dried food, and enough arrogance to fill the tree line. They don't know they've pitched their camp just 100 yards from something that doesn't sleep. Something that has been watching hikers longer than there's been a name for it. Chapter 1. The last trip before winter, they called it one last hurrah. Before the cold came in, before the roads iced over and the woods went quiet, 4 friends packed their gear into a too small SUV and drove 3 hours into the northern reaches of Cascade County. The plan was simple: 3 nights off-grid, no signal, no news, just trees, beer, and the kind of silence you don't get in the city. The group, Jard 27, the planner, the one who found the spot and convinced the others it would be secluded but safe. Grew up hiking with his dad and thought he knew more than he did. Maya 25, sharp, cautious, always the first to notice when something felt off. Brought a paper map, a whistle, and enough extra food to feed a 5th person. Liam 28, funny in a dry way, always joking to defuse tension. City-born and nature clueless. Brought a Bluetooth speaker, beef jerky, and a single hoodie. Nina 26, reserved, introspective. She'd been quiet lately. Jard said the trip would be good for her. Get her out of her head, he said. She barely looked up from the car window the whole drive. The site Jard picked was deep in the Iron Ridge woods, past a state park, and well beyond any cell tower. There were no official campsites, just a clearing beside an old fire road, flagged on an ancient hiking forum post from 2009. Unreal stars, the top comment had read. Saw something move in the trees though lol. They arrived late, around 4:30 p.m. The sun had already begun to crawl toward the tree line, bathing the forest in that long amber stretch of light that makes everything look too still. They set up quickly, 2 tents, a ring of stones for the fire. Maya wandered to the edge of the clearing, scanning the woods with a frown. It's quiet, she said, more to herself than the others. Good, Jard grinned, unrolling his sleeping bag. That's the point. That night they cooked hot dogs and told stories. The laughter was easy. The air was crisp. Jard poured cheap whiskey into paper cups. When the fire burned low and Liam started snoring in his tent, Nina lingered beside the coals. I don't like this place, she whispered to Maya. Why? Maya asked. Nina looked out into the trees. It's like we're not supposed to be here, like something's just holding still. Maya listened. The woods were still, not even wind, not even crickets. Chapter 2. BRINCHES. The second day began beautifully. Sunlight filtered through the pines like it had to ask permission first. Jard made instant coffee over the fire pit and handed out protein bars. The tension from the previous night seemed to have evaporated with the morning fog. Nina smiled faintly for the first time in days. They hiked. There was no trail, not really, just a rough, meandering path through mossy stone and brush. Maya kept the compass. Jard carried the bear spray. Liam, lagging and sweating, kept complaining that something was watching them. It's just squirrels, Jard said, but there weren't any squirrels, or birds, or bugs. The woods were too quiet again, a heavy, listening silence that stretched between the trees. They hiked anyway. They found an old hunting blind collapsed under deadfall. Jard wanted to poke around. Nina told him not to. There were long claw marks on the plywood. Not fresh, but deep. Too deep for any of the local animals they knew. Back at camp, they made dinner early. Dusk came fast, as if the sun had ducked behind the mountain and decided not to come back. It started with rustling. Around 8:30 p.m., just after they zipped themselves into tents, Maya heard it. Not wind, not a small animal. This wasn't skittering or twitching undergrowth. This was something big, slow, deliberate. Leaves being moved aside, she held her breath, pressed her ear to the tent fabric. Then Liam whispered, "You guys hear that?" Jard called out, "Probably deer." But it circled the camp. Crunch. Then again, closer this time. Crunch. Nina, lying motionless beside Maya in their shared tent, gripped her sleeping bag so tight her knuckles whitened. "It's not walking right," she whispered. Maya agreed, but couldn't say why. The steps paused behind Liam's tent. Then silence. Then a sound they'd never forget, the faint, rhythmic tapping on the nylon, like long nails. Tap, tap, tap. Liam shouted, "Knock it off, Jard." "I'm in my tent, Jude." Maya unzipped just enough to peek out. Nothing. But the fire pit, now cold and black, was smoking again, as if it had been relit for a moment, then snuffed out. The smell of wet ash hung in the air, clinging to everything. No one slept that night, and no one wanted to admit why. Chapter 3, mimicked by morning, no one had spoken about the noises. They tried to pretend it hadn't happened, ate dry granola, sipped weak coffee, laughed too loud. But their faces betrayed them. Puffy eyes, tight smiles. Jard's hand trembled when he poured water from the thermos. The forest was wet that morning, not from rain, but dew so heavy it clung like sweat. Everything glistened. Even the trees seemed wrong. The trunks too pale, the undergrowth thinned out, as if something had passed through dragging. They found tracks, not hoofprints, not pawprints, something in between. Elk, maybe, Jard suggested, but there were too many toes, and they weren't symmetrical. That afternoon, Maya tried to call her sister. No signal. Her phone displayed a single bar that flickered like a faulty bulb. She raised it above her head, wandered up a slope, and finally gave up. But as she turned back to camp, she realized she'd walked much farther than she thought. The trees looked wrong again. The angles were off subtly, trunks tilted inward. Roots spiraled like knotted fingers. She turned in a full circle and couldn't find the sun. No sound but wind, no voices. Until Maya, it came from behind a tree. A whisper, soft, familiar. "Maya, help, I fell, hurts, hurts." It was Liam's voice, but shaky, glitching, like a warped recording left in the rain. She froze, her brain screamed. Liam was back at camp. The voice repeated, "Help, fell, help." Then silence. Something moved behind the tree, not fast, not slow, steady. She turned and ran. By the time she made it back to camp, Liam was sitting by the fire, munching trail mix and cursing about the lighter not working. Maya collapsed and vomited behind her tent. They didn't speak about it that night either, but the scratching returned. This time from inside the treeline. The sound of something pacing, a long drag in the dirt, a faint thump like a body pressing gently against the fabric of the tents. Then, "Maya," the voice said again, from just inches away. Her name in Liam's voice, but wrong, hollow, like someone had studied it, practiced it, worn it like skin. Then it spoke again, deeper. Jard. Then Nina, like it was learning. No one unzipped their tents. Something moved around their circle all night, slow and calm, humming a tuneless lullaby no one could place. Chapter 4, the tree-line. Liam was the first to suggest leaving. "We pack it up, tonight, hike back to the trailhead, sleep in the car if we have to." It wasn't just the scratches, or the voice. It was something deeper, instinct. The kind of fear that lives in bones, older than language. But Maya hesitated. "We can't hike out in the dark." Jard was already folding up his sleeping bag, stuffing it violently into his pack. "Then we leave at dawn. First light. Before that thing gets any braver." They agreed, but the forest did not. That night the air was still, unnaturally so. No wind, no birds. Even the bugs were quiet. It felt like the world was holding its breath. Around 2:13 a.m., Liam sat bolt upright in his tent. He didn't know what woke him at first. Then he noticed the zipper on his tent was open, not all the way, just a few inches, like fingers had tested it. Outside, branches creaked, not in the wind, in rhythm, like footsteps. Then he heard Maya whisper his name from just outside. "Liam, come here." He froze, because Maya was in her tent. He could hear her breathing just a few feet to his right. He didn't move, didn't blink, just listened. The whisper came again. "Liam," drawn out, slurred, like the word had weight, like the syllables were being tugged out of something's throat. Then silence, except for the sound of something licking the outside of his tent. Long, wet, deliberate strokes. By morning, they were ready. They broke camp in silence. Chadeauxs' hands were shaking too badly to tie his boots. Maya looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her pupils were dilated. She kept twitching her head to the side, like something was following her. It was. They saw it just before the trailhead. It was standing between the trees, where the undergrowth thinned into a slope of switchbacks. At first it looked like a deer, tall, antlers wide like branches, but then it stood upright, and it had arms, lanky, too long for its torso. Its skin was pulled taut over wiry muscle, greyish pale, like birch bark left to rot. Its mouth was wrong, a split too wide, with blackened teeth like broken nails. It didn't move, but its chest heaved like it was breathing hard, watching. They didn't scream, they didn't run, they just walked, down the trail, slowly, carefully, every step a prayer. They didn't stop until they reached the car. Chadeauxs fumbled the keys twice. When they pulled onto the main road, Nina turned to look back. It was standing in the middle of the dirt road, still upright, but now it was waving, just waving, not frantically, casually, like it knew they'd be back. Chapter 5. The recording, they didn't talk for most of the drive back. It wasn't until they hit the edge of cell reception, halfway down Route 12, that Maya finally spoke. "Did any of you get it on video?" Chadeauxs didn't answer. Liam was staring out the passenger window like he was trying to convince himself that trees were just trees again. But Nina spoke up. "I recorded the audio," she said, almost ashamed. "From last night. I hit record when it started scratching." Her voice was thin, tight in her throat like she was afraid saying it too loudly might summon it. They pulled into a diner on the edge of town, one of those half-abandoned trucker stops where the coffee tastes like bleach and the booths are always sticky. It felt safer there, surrounded by fluorescent lights and the hum of deep fryers. Maya pulled out her phone. She opened the voice memo. 3:12 a.m. campsite, it read. She pressed play. There was nothing, no scratching, no footsteps, no whispered voice, just breathing, shallow, close breathing. But it wasn't hers. It wasn't any of theirs. Then a voice, not a whisper, not in English, a dry, guttural clicking, a low, wet syllable that shouldn't be spoken by anything with a human throat. Then silence. Liam pushed the phone away like it had burned him. "Turn it off," Maya did, but she looked pale and cold, like something had been taken from her just hearing it. Nina frowned. "That's not what I heard. I heard scratching, like claws. I heard it breathing." "I heard it say my name," Liam said quietly. Chadeauxs looked at each of them, then reached into his coat pocket and pulled out his phone. He scrolled for a moment, found the video he took on the trail when they first saw it. He hit play. The screen showed nothing but trees. The audio was muffled, wind blown. No one spoke. No one screamed. But something moved between the trunks. A tall, pale blur, almost humanoid, almost deer-like. And then it stopped. The camera panned too quickly, but for half a second one frame hung too long, two black eyes. Round, reflective, too close together. It was looking straight at the camera. Then it was gone. Chadeauxs tapped the screen. "I didn't see that before." "Did you?" No one answered, because deep in the audio, barely audible under the wind, was a second sound, something like a heartbeat, thick, wet, not coming from the camera mic, but behind it, like whatever filmed this wasn't alone. Chapter 6. The sound outside Liam didn't go home right away. He checked into a motel off the highway, one of those blank, interchangeable boxes where nothing feels like it's ever truly happened, where the air smells like stale detergent and nothing on the walls has personality. But when he finally lay down, he didn't sleep. Not really. He drifted in and out of something like sleep, but not quite. His body went slack, His eyes shut, but his mind stayed alert, stuck in a place between waking and dream, as though his consciousness had stepped off the edge of a cliff and was still waiting to land. And in that space, he saw them. Antlers, not resting on a stag or buck, but growing from walls, from ceilings, from the backs of his hands. Some were cracked and yellowed like old ivory. Others were black, glistening like wet coal. They jutted out from impossible places, intersecting dream rooms he didn't recognize, poking through doorways that led nowhere. He dreamed of following a trail through dense fog, but instead of trees, he was walking between ribs the size of telephone poles, curved and buried in the dirt like ancient ruins. As he walked, antlers began to sprout from the ground like fungal blooms, sharp and pulsing with an inner glow. They bent toward him. Each time he tried to wake, he thought he did, only to realize moments later that he hadn't, that the dream had just shifted layers, deeper, closer. When he finally tore himself out of it, it was just before dawn. The room was cold, still, but something was wrong. There was a noise, barely audible at first, floating in from the small vent above the motel room window. A voice. At first he thought it was a radio from the next room, then a hallucination. But the more he listened, the more he realized what he was hearing. It was Ben's voice, his missing friend, the one who never came back from the tent. The voice was muffled and low, but unmistakable. He said Liam's name once, then again, slower. Liam. Pause. I'm cold. Another pause, shifting air. I think it's still here. And then laughter, quiet, wrong. As though whoever was laughing had no idea how to mimic joy, only the sound of it. Liam moved toward the window, unsure whether to look or hide. The sky was still dark, and the glass reflected only the pale shape of his face. But as he leaned close, he saw something in the reflection that shouldn't have been there. Antlers behind him, towering, black. He spun. Nothing, just his motel room. Just stale curtains and a blinking smoke detector and silence. The voice didn't come again. But that night, when Maya called, her voice was shaking. She hadn't slept either. She dreamed of walking barefoot in the forest, blood trickling between her toes, and someone was calling her name from the branches. Not her name now, her childhood name, the one no one used anymore, the one she hadn't told the others. Chapter 7. The listener in the pines. The apartment was too quiet. That silence used to be comforting, her little slice of stillness in a loud world. But now it pressed against her temples like a migraine. Every creak of the building felt intentional. Every tick of the baseboard heat sounded like breath being held. Maya hadn't left the house in 2 days. The others were unraveling. Sam had gone completely silent. Liam kept texting her in bursts. Erratic, confused messages like, "You remember his face better than I do, right? And did Ben always chew on the side of his cheek like that?" And then, I heard it again. My name behind me. It sounded like you. "Maya, what if we brought it back?" She didn't answer him. She just opened her laptop. She needed something. A pattern. An explanation. Anything to anchor the rising, irrational idea that something had followed them out of the woods, something that looked like Ben but wasn't, and it was watching them now, stretching its fingers into their thoughts. She started with obvious searches. Michigan woods disappearance, strange behavior after camping, dreams of antlers, forest mimicry legend at first. It was the usual mix of Bigfoot blogs, Reddit creepypasta, and amateur YouTube documentaries. Too much noise. Too much speculation. But something in one thread caught her eye, an old URL for a long-defunct forum called the Root and Bone Board. The link still worked. Barely. It was the kind of site that hadn't been touched since the late 2000s. Black background, pixelated green text, and a flickering banner that read, "There are older things than us." She scrolled through threads about black dogs on back roads, faceless things in cornfields, and dream sharing among twins. But one thread had over 200 replies. Its title was simple. "The Listener in the Pines, Clare County, MI Legend." Her breath caught. That was the area, roughly near Hemlock Hollow. The first post began like a story passed through campfire whispers. The tone was casual, but the content gnawed at her nerves. "My uncle said when he was a kid, a boy went missing near Hemlock Hollow. They found his boots by a fire pit, but no sign of a struggle. He came back 3 nights later, just appeared in the middle of the kitchen like he'd been dropped there. Didn't talk, didn't eat, just kept staring up at the ceiling corner in his bedroom like something was perched there. Eventually, they moved, said he was never the same, wouldn't look in mirrors. Another reply claimed the boy eventually vanished again, just gone one morning, bed still made. That thread turned into a collection of sightings and theories. Posters debated whether the listener was a ghost, a Wendigo, a tulpa born of local fear. But what stuck with her was the consistency. The common thread, whispers, antlers, names spoken in familiar voices, a fire pit, people who returned, altered, one post read. It doesn't break in, it waits for you to let it in, to listen long enough. It lives on the edge of your thoughts until there's no edge anymore. Maya found herself shaking. She glanced toward her kitchen doorway. It looked deeper than usual, a touch too dark. She stood and shut the laptop, but then she opened it again 10 minutes later. This time she dug deeper, pulled up an archived local zine from the 1970s. There, buried in an article about seasonal folklore in northern Michigan, she saw it again. The listener is not a predator. It's an invitation. It wears the face you'll respond to. It doesn't need to hunt. It waits until you make a place for it. Maya clutched her phone. Her hand was trembling. She still hadn't told anyone about her dream, the last one she had before they left the woods. In it, she was standing outside the tent. The fire had gone out. She couldn't move, couldn't even breathe properly. And something stepped between the trees with limbs too long, too bowed, its head heavy with antlers that dripped something wet onto the leaves. It leaned down to her ear and whispered in a perfect imitation of her dead grandmother's voice. "You were always the most curious." She snapped awake, that night covered in sweat. Now, looking back, she realized what Liam had said made a terrible kind of sense. What if we brought it back? But the worst moment came when she checked the backpack she'd used that weekend. Buried at the bottom, folded and placed carefully beneath her rain jacket, was a slip of thick, yellowing paper. The kind they hadn't packed. No handwriting, just a clean, block-printed message in faded ink. "Thank you." Her pulse fluttered in her throat. She dropped the note on the table and stared at it for a long, long time. Later that night, unable to sleep, she reopened the forum thread. One last comment, dated years after the rest, caught her eye. If it ever thanks you, it means it's already inside the circle. Chapter 8. The circle and the fire pit. Liam didn't answer at first. Maya called twice. Then again an hour later. She left a message the third time, her voice raw from sleep deprivation. "Liam, please pick up. I found something. I need to talk. This is bigger than Ben. I think it's in all of us now." He finally responded with a voice memo at 2:17 a.m. "I've been sleeping in the bathroom. I don't know why. Every time I lie down in bed, I see something moving outside the window. But I'm on the second floor. There's nothing out there. And I haven't seen Ben since Tuesday. I think he's gone again, Maya. Or worse, he's just pretending to be around when I'm awake." She didn't respond with words. She just sent the photos she'd taken of the forum thread, the paper slip, and an image she'd found buried in the zine archive. A charcoal sketch with no attribution. It showed 5 figures gathered around a fire pit. Shadows walked around them, and behind them, emerging from the tree line, a tall, spindly shape with branching antlers and no face at all. He called her 10 minutes later. His voice was flat. "We have to go back." They met the next morning at a gas station outside Gladwin. Neither of them brought up how thin the other looked, how twitchy, how tired. It was the first time they'd seen each other since the camping trip, and both felt the shape of the absence between them. The gap where Ben should have been standing, cracking some dumb joke or rolling his eyes at the sunrise. They didn't speak much on the drive. The road back into the forest was barely a road anymore. The county hadn't maintained it in years. The map still showed a dotted line marking it as seasonal, but the tree branches had grown greedy, dragging along the car's windows like fingers. They parked near the same overgrown turnout. The clearing was still there. The old stone fire pit, the crushed circle of earth where their tent had been, but it looked warped, off, as if the land remembered their intrusion and had subtly rearranged itself out of spite. The air was heavy, too still, no birdsong, no insects. Liam dropped his backpack and immediately lit a cigarette, even though he'd claimed to have quit years ago. "You feel that?" he asked. Maya nodded, staring at the fire pit. It looked deeper now, wider than it should have been. And at the center, nearly invisible under soot and half-buried leaves, was another piece of folded paper. She didn't pick it up. She just looked at Liam. "Why would it leave us notes?" He exhaled slowly. "Maybe it doesn't want us to run. Maybe it wants us to stay." They sat by the fire pit until the sun started to dip. Neither one had the nerve to suggest building a fire. Liam kept turning in slow circles, scanning the trees like he expected something to step out. Maya just stared at the ashes. Eventually, she said, "I think this whole place is part of it. Not just where it lives, what it is." Liam didn't argue. "Do you think we can stop it?" she asked. "Stop what?" "Whatever we let out." He opened his mouth, then froze. In the distance, barely audible beneath the rustling branches, they both heard it. A voice, muffled, familiar, drifting through the woods. It was Ben, laughing. But the sound was wrong, looped, like a recording glitching on the edge of a worn cassette. The same syllables repeating, a laugh, a breath, a whisper of Maya's name. "It's just trying to make us go in," Liam said, standing up. Maya followed him, her legs trembling. But when they turned back to the car path, the trail was gone. There was only forest, and something, far off through the pines, stepping delicately on hooved feet. Chapter 9. The one that looks like Ben the forest had no edges now. Trees stretched endlessly, too close together, branches draping low like curtains. No sky, no path. Just pine needles, shadows, and the awful sense that something was waiting to take the next step for them. Liam tried to keep Maya in his peripheral, but it was like watching fog swallow headlights. One blink, and she was farther away. Another, and Maya, he turned in place. She was gone, just trees, just that low, whispering wind. Shit. He ran, branches clawing at his arms, a sharp root twisting his ankle, but still he ran. And then, without warning, the world opened. A clearing, not the clearing, but one like it. And at the center stood Ben backlit by the smoldering orange of the dying sunset, wearing the same hoodie he'd worn that night at the campsite. He smiled. "Jude," he said, voice light, casual, like nothing had happened. "You guys took forever to find me." Liam's legs locked. His lungs burned. "Ben." The thing that looked like Ben tilted its head. Then it spoke again, but this time it didn't use the voice from his memories. It used Maya's voice, her terrified, shaking whisper from the night they'd lost him. "I think it's watching us." Liam stepped back. No, that's not, you're not him." Ben's face didn't move. But the voice that came next was his mother's. Clear, cruel. "You always ran, Liam, even when it mattered." He turned and bolted. No thought, no plan, just pure instinct. Behind him, the forest erupted with footsteps. Fast. Wrong. Hooves and hands alternating. Something crashing between trees, mimicking his own breathing, perfectly synced like a predator wearing his reflection. He didn't stop until he hit something hard, shoulder first, stumbling into Maya, who shrieked and spun, fists raised. "Jesus! Liam!" They collapsed together at the base of a tree, gasping. She clutched his arm. "I heard it too. I saw." She didn't finish. She just shook her head. "We have to go now. This place isn't just haunted," she said. "It's hungry." They didn't speak after that, not for hours. Not until the forest began to hum like a thing asleep but dreaming. Chapter 10. We heard it breathing. They moved without speaking, guided only by instinct, and a growing dread neither could name. The forest had grown silent, not empty, just quiet in the wrong way. Like a house holding its breath before a scream. No crickets, no birds, not even the rustling of leaves, just breathing. Wet, rhythmic, all around them. Maya stopped suddenly, fingers clamping around Liam's wrist. "Look!" Ahead, partially buried in pine needles, was Ben's flashlight, still on, still flickering. Liam knelt and picked it up. The bulb sputtered against his palm like it recognized him. And as he raised it, the beam fell across a patch of disturbed earth, footprints. Deep, not boots, not bare, hooved. The trail led into a thicket of trees bent in a crescent, like a jaw with crooked teeth. At the center of the grove, something stood waiting. It wore Ben's hoodie. It had his face, too, but its legs were wrong, and its eyes were wronger. Worse still, it was smiling in a way Ben never had. It held something in its hand, Maya's scarf. She took a step forward. Ben, Liam grabbed her, pulled her back. That's not him, it's not. The thing spoke. You left him. You watched and you ran. Maya's knees buckled. Liam caught her. He cried for you. Its voice broke. A sound like tearing skin. Then it turned toward Liam. You always leave. That's why you're still alive. It stepped forward. Branches snapped behind them. More footsteps. More voices rising behind the trees. Maya's laugh. Ben's cough. Liam's own scream played back like a memory he hadn't lived yet. You don't leave the woods, the thing said. You bring them with you. Liam squeezed Maya's hand. Run. They did. The thing didn't chase at first. It didn't have to. The forest did it for it. The ground split. Trees leaned. The trail bent back on itself again and again, until Liam realized they'd passed the same dead log twice. But the creature's steps never faded. It was always behind them, always just outside the light, until the light died, until Maya screamed, until Liam didn't hear her anymore. He didn't remember how he got out. He just remembered waking up at the trailhead, alone, muddy, freezing, a park ranger asking him who he was and how he got there. They found no trace of Maya, no record of Ben's name in the logs, no footprints but Liam's. No one believed him, until weeks later a voicemail arrived on his phone. Maya's voice, 3 words, distorted, echoing, "It's your turn." You made it back for now, but the things in the dark never truly leave, do they? They watch, they wait, and perhaps they remember you now too. If you want to hear more, if you dare to listen again, step back into the shadows. Like the video, subscribe, but know this, some doors once opened do not close so easily.